Okay, do I have an agenda? I do. So are we opening it up like a regular meeting, or can we do that without a quorum?
Well, you still can, and then we'll skip over all of the orders and proceed right into an update. Hi, Mike. We can't hear you. I think you're muted.
There you go. How's that?
Very good. Good afternoon. So we'll turn things over to Councillor McPhail, who's going to chair today's meeting.
Okay, is Mike our only contestant? Okay, good morning, Mike.
I should win the prize then.
Yeah, you are undying gratitude. So we'll call the meeting to order at 2:05. And how are we gonna do motions?
We can't.
We can't do any motions.
So we don't-
We'll just call the meeting to order. And from there on in, I guess we're just going to have a general update. Certainly it's been a while since we have got together, and that's maybe we'll have to get some people back around the table here at our next get together. So Julie, why don't you just give us an update on where we are and what we're doing and where we're going?
Certainly. So before I start with a brief update, Deputy Warden Marks wanted me to relay his regrets for the initial part of today's meeting because he is attending an event on behalf of the warden at the Masonic Center presenting to the Women's Institute. So he's regretful he couldn't be here to get us started today with the committee meeting. So in terms of general updates, we did experience catastrophic cybersecurity incident at the county, which significantly impacted our ability to host committee meetings and conduct kind of some regular business. But notwithstanding that, we have made some great work happen with regard to broadband and acting upon council's recent direction to provide an advocacy plan in support of our community's work in connectivity. So we prepared an advocacy plan for the committee's consideration and recommended that once the committee has had a chance to provide feedback and review that advocacy plan and help us finalize that, then it would be presented to Elgin County Council for their endorsement. So I recommend perhaps we go through that in greater detail when additional committee members are present at our next committee meeting. Additionally, what was included in today's agenda is a report from the General Manager of Engineering, Planning and Enterprise and Deputy CIO with respect to White Station and the antenna that is located on that site. And council did suggest that the committee do a review of some options associated with what could be done to support connectivity and provide them with some recommendations in return. So lots of work has been happening and we're eager to get going, developing an action plan to support the advocacy plan. Oh, we have another member.
It's Dominique.
So lastly, and forgive me for omitting this as part of my general update, but we've also done some work developing a fiber optic progress map that we hoped to get committee feedback on so that we can post that to our Connected Elgin website and engage with our ISPs in providing them with a map that shows areas that haven't yet been developed with fiber. So that's a high level update. I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Good afternoon, Dominique. We're kind of struggling with a quorum here today, so I guess more or less we're just having a a discussion with those that are present. We are expecting Councillor Marks to show up here shortly. He's at another event. So, Brian, did you want to just touch base on the tower at White Station for those that are present?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair, through you to the committee. I prepared a report as it pertains to the county's ownership of its antenna communications tower located at our White Station Operations Center. The county recently retained the services of West Tower Communications to perform a structural inspection of our 200-foot tall approximate antenna tower in order to ensure that it satisfies CSA standards that exist and govern that tower today. Through the course of West Tower's assessment, they deemed that noted some deficiencies that required corrective actions that I'm happy to report were also recently completed. At the same time, West Tower performed a structural analysis with utilizing an in-house professional engineer to determine whether or not the tower could physically accommodate additional loading resulting from potential future or additional communication or ISP service providers affixing their equipment to the tower. Based upon their review, they had determined that such could not be accommodated, and that due to the existing condition of the tower, its age, they've deemed that the tower has reached the end of its service life. The deficiencies which were recently corrected will allow the tower to live on for an additional 5 to 7 years, but after that point, West Tower's in-house engineer is strongly recommending that the tower be replaced or consideration for its replacement be given. The report further goes on to expand and provides a sense of replacement costs associated with that tower. To replace a like tower, to accommodate the existing loading, it's estimated that its replacement cost would be somewhere in the range of $150,000 to $200,000. West Tower was also asked to provide us with a cost estimate to increase or to replace the tower with a larger capacity bearing tower, and have suggested that the cost to do so is likely to range, based on experience on another project underway right now, in the range of $300,000 to $350,000. Alternatively, this committee and or a future ISP service provider and ultimately council may want to consider leasing a portion of the county's White Station property to another prospective communication service provider who would be given the ability to erect their own tower. So with that, Mr. Chair, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Okay. Any questions, Dominic? I guess we've already had this discussion earlier on. How about you, Mike?
I don't think I had any questions really.
Okay. I guess it's hard to make any kind of decisions on this with the information that we've got, and so why don't we just set this in abeyance and keep an awareness of what is going on, maybe in the background. You said there's a potential.
Mr. Chair, sorry to interrupt, Mr. Chair, but I backing up, I guess, one quick question for Brian. That estimate from West Tower in a replacement 6 to 7 years from now, is that based on today's pricing, or would that be inflationary pricing built into that? Do you know?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Chair, to Mike, that's based on today's pricing.
Thank you.
Mr. Chair,
Yes,
so is there a need to provide direction in terms of the options between exploring a stronger tower to be leased or simply leasing property? Is that the direction that's needed?
I don't know, are we in a situation to give any direction at all?
No, we don't have,
quorum.
we don't have quorum, so it's best if we just gather or consider questions, have a discussion, and then hopefully present the agenda again when we have additional members present.
For sure, thank you.
Just as a general question, when ISPs are taking out road use permits, are we keeping a running track of that so we know what's being added to our infrastructure in Elgin? Yes.
So as part of the connectivity advocacy plan report, you'll note Appendix 3 is a fiber optic progress map. So when Brian Lima and his team receive those road permits, they automatically update the map through our GIS technician. And so that is something, a new process that has been developed in support of the advocacy work that we hope to get underway very soon on behalf of the Connectivity Committee, whereby we could post that map on our website and make it available to prospective ISPs who will then hopefully use that map to identify areas where they'd like to provide service in our community.
And do you know anything, Brian? I see driving in here today, there's a big Swift project sign on number 3 highway. Anybody know what's happening there?
We will prepare an update for your next meeting,
Okay,
the status update.
we do have a sign. And for the rest of the committee, I know that North Frontenac seemed to be very busy in West Elgin, running fiber up and down a good number of, a number of roads in West Elgin. Good afternoon, Justin.
Good afternoon. Sorry for being late.
Okay, with that,
And we have quorum.
we've got the fellow all dressed up here to chair the connectivity meeting. Are we at a quorum yet? We are, okay.
All right. Well, thank you. I apologize for being late. I was at the anniversary party for the Women's Institute. It was actually, it looked like they're having a lot of fun, so. But, have we called the meeting to order, or where are we at?
We are, yeah. Well, we called it to order, but we didn't do any business because we didn't have a quorum. But now we do.
Well, thank you for, have we approved the agenda? Okay, first order then, everyone's looked at the agenda, there's no omissions or additions. I'll entertain a motion to adopt the agenda. Councillor Jiguer and Councillor McPhail, mover and seconder. I guess, do you need to call a vote?
I do, yes. So Councillor Jiguer,
Yes.
Councillor McPhail,
Yes,
Justin Pennings, Mike Andrews,
Yes.
and Deputy Warden.
Yes,
5-0, the motion is carried.
thank you. Okay. Assuming adoption of minutes, have everyone had a chance to check them, see if there's any errors, omissions? If you're satisfied, we'll entertain a motion to adopt them. Moved by Councillor Jiguer and second by Justin. Any discussion? If not, please call the vote.
Councillor Jiguer,
Yes.
Councillor McPhail,
yes,
Justin Pennings, Mike Andrews,
Yes.
and Deputy Warden Rose.
Yes.
5-0, the motion is carried.
Great. I do not believe we have a delegation, no delegations. We have a briefing, I think, from Brian about our antenna. Just go ahead when you're ready.
Thank Thank you, Mr. Deputy Warden, through you to the committee. This report before you details county's recent inspection findings as it relates to our antenna communications tower located at the county's White Station Operations Center. Just to give the committee some context, that tower is original to the facility's construction, dates back to the early 60s, was erected in support of radio communications that is still in operation to this day. The service provider, or the service provided with respect to that technology is under contract and supports our tenant. In accordance with CSA standards, tower inspections are required to be completed biannually. Such was recently completed, in which deficiencies were noted by our service inspection contractor, West Tower Communications, that was retained by the county. A series of deficiencies were noted and recently corrected. In addition, West Tower was tasked with the use of their in-house structural engineer to undertake a structural assessment to determine whether or not the existing tower could support additional loading resulting from the option or possibility of allowing additional communication service providers the ability to affix their equipment to the tower. Unfortunately, based on their findings, they determined that such is not possible, and further determined that the tower has reached the end of its useful service life. The deficiencies recently completed will allow it, however, to live on for another 5 to 7 years, after which point West Tower is strongly recommending that it be replaced. West Tower was then asked by county staff to provide 2 estimates, the first being a cost estimate to replace a like-for-like tower, meeting today's modern standards and CSA requirements, and have indicated that such replacement cost would be in the range of $150,000 to $200,000. In response to providing a cost estimate to replace the tower with something that would have increased loading capacity, West Tower provided us with a cost estimate based on current experience associated with another project in which they're doing the same thing, and have indicated that the cost to do so is in the range of $300,000 to $350,000. These costs are 2022 dollars. Another alternative that's certainly possible for the county to consider is the option of contemplating leasing out a portion of the county's White Station Operations Center property to a prospective communication service provider for their potential interest in erecting their own tower infrastructure. With that, Mr. Deputy Warden, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you, Brian. I'll open the floor if anyone from the committee has a comment or a question. Guess when you think about it, that tower's been there a long time, and I probably wouldn't want to try and climb it. So.
In your communications with them, are they, is West Tower putting up broadband communication towers for different jurisdictions, different companies?
Through you, Mr. Deputy Warden, they are certainly installing towers across the province for multiple customers, not just broadband, or they do work for Rogers, many of the large telecom service providers, as well as smaller customers as well.
Cell phone, everything.
Wide range of potential applications, correct?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to Brian.
Go ahead.
Thank you. So, I like the notion of being able to lease the property. It doesn't appear that it would have any impact to the county in terms of cost, and really just the benefit. anything I'm missing there? Is it too good to be true?
Through Mr. Deputy Warden, certainly in the absence of a formal proposal on understanding, potential property implications, at this point in time, I don't foresee any significant constraints. Certainly the property is large enough and isn't being utilized in its entirety right now. So again, in the absence of a formal proposal, it's certainly a possible opportunity.
Right, that's something I would be interested in exploring further, certainly. More than, building a tower that is beyond our minimum needs, because that seems like that would be beyond our responsibilities to be, building and investing in something that is not for us. And that would strictly benefit another corporation. But definitely the notion of leasing property is something that I find aligned with our plan and our goals.
Certainly, if there's an opportunity for someone putting tower up and improving the coverage in the area, because I know many people along that strip, they have terrible coverage, absolute terrible coverage. So that would be a good opportunity, I think. Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mike.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the Field of Dreams concept of build it and they will come. And I think for the county to invest that kind of capital without having pre-arranged tenants would be poor use of taxpayer money for sure. But it's my understanding, again, this is for Brian, I guess, there's currently only one tenant on that tower. I'm not sure who that is, whether it's the county itself, but I think I'm echoing Councillor Jiguer, really. It seems to me that that's really certainly beyond what this committee should be recommending to the county, but as a citizen, I think that's probably not where the county should be investing either. It could very well be that there are wireless providers interested in putting up their own facilities, and many of them would not necessarily need a tower as robust as the one that's on site, and yet could still service a number of at least close proximity customers that were in need. And where certainly the other comment I'd make is if there's not a contemplation of doing that until the life of that tower is gone, at 6 to 7 years, the world could dramatically change over that time. So we wouldn't really even know what we would be suggesting or recommending if we were to recommend putting up another tower.
I see some heads nodding here in agreement, and I certainly agree with you, Mike. So, any further discussion? If there's not, we have we have a resolution. Would you like to read it, Julie?
Yes, that the report titled White Station Operations Center Antenna Communications Tower Optional Replacement Report from the General Manager of Engineering, Planning and Enterprise and Deputy CAO dated June 21st, 2022 be received and filed. And that maybe follow-up information with respect to the option of providing space at White Station for prospective ISPs to install towers be provided to the Connectivity Committee at a future meeting.
Works for me. Everyone, Dominique, is that a mover?
Yes.
Okay, thank you. Are you seconding that, Justin?
I am.
Okay. Any further discussion? Are we ready to vote on that motion? Please call the vote.
Councillor Jiguer,
Yes.
Councillor McPhail,
Yes.
Justin Pennings,
Yes.
Mike Andrews,
Yes.
and Deputy Warden Marks.
Yes,
5-0, the motion is carried.
thank you. Move on to connectivity advocacy plan. CAO, please.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, through you to the committee. So the purpose of this report is to provide the committee with a draft advocacy plan, as well as some background information, because we lost a bit of time associated with a recent cybersecurity incident. So good to get back on track and centered to where we are moving forward again. You'll see within the agenda, there is a draft connectivity plan, an infographic that helps us articulate visually what the flow of information and responsibilities is associated with the connectivity advocacy plan, as well as in Appendix 3 is a fiber optic progress map indicating connectivity in Elgin. So the Connectivity Committee has worked very hard to find ways to create what we're referring to as an enabling environment for ISPs in our community. And we have seen great progress, and that is evident on the fiber optic progress map, which is included within today's agenda. We provided within the report a chronology of decision-making, which started in 2021, and Elgin County Council engaged IBI Group to complete a study, which was called an Internet Connectivity and Broadband Analysis, Assessment, and Proposed Solutions Study. And at the December 16th, 2021 Connectivity Committee meeting, IBI, the consultants engaged to complete that study, presented a final draft to the committee, and we included IBI Group's options within the report itself for your information. So while the committee carefully considered all options, they did present one option to County Council as a recommended option. And on February 17th, the committee decided that the IBI report itself be presented to Elgin County Council as final draft, and that the chair be directed to provide County Council with a summary of recommended next steps, which included option 1, advocacy, strategic purchasing, and ISP coordination to facilitate and advocate for investment in broadband infrastructure, specifically related to senior government and private sector investment. So we did delay bringing forward a strategy to the committee, and we apologize for that. It is linked to a cybersecurity incident that we experienced through the month of May and April. So the connectivity advocacy plan is a plan that was carefully prepared by the administrative services team and reviewed by IT and reviewed by engineering and planning for comment and review. It is presented to you for comment and review. We hope that once finalized, we will be able to present the plan to Elgin County Council for their endorsement as well. So the first option is, this plan does support option 1, which again is advocacy, strategic purchasing, and ISP coordination. And the preamble there indicates that advocacy efforts with all other levels of government are to be centered on the critical role played by access to stable and affordable broadband infrastructure in local, provincial, and national economic recovery following the COVID-19 pandemic. The key concept will be supported and demonstrated through 4 pillars and their corresponding objectives. So recognizing that the committee has had some time with this report, I won't go into each of the actions or the responsibilities unless that is the preference of the committee, but I will discuss the pillar and the objectives and make sure that we are on the right track there, and we'll incorporate any feedback, questions, concerns that you have into a finalized plan. So the first pillar is communications and engagement. And the objective is to communicate the activities and efforts of the Connectivity Committee. The second objective within communications and engagement is to highlight resident experiences in order to attract ISP funding and funding support. The third communications and engagement objective is to provide a public repository of Elgin-specific connectivity data. And we have identified a number of corresponding actions and have identified the responsibility within our team of who will take the lead on those initiatives. So is that a sufficient level of detail, Mr. Chairman, or would you prefer if I go into greater detail?
It works for me, but
Just what, is there any question, do we have an open channel of dialogue between ourselves and the Ministry of Infrastructure and the Canadian infrastructure people that supposedly have money towards, to be able to put towards these projects? Is there, keeping our ear to the ground, what's out there, what's available, is that something that we try to routinely keep our ear to the ground on?
Certainly. So we do track ministry and provincial activities very closely. We do track available funding opportunities very closely. In terms of having open dialogue, I would suggest that we're a little ways off having an kind of a open dialogue with them. Right now, it's kind of a wait and see how they make out with the funding program that is currently in place to expand broadband across the province. So we watch carefully and take quick action, and would recommend quick action should opportunities exist to kind of capitalize on any funding opportunities.
the one good thing, I suppose, that same minister, she kept her portfolio, so that helps. We don't have to start training another one.
Sure.
Go ahead.
Along with that, Mr. Chair, is there, and what you've seen in any of the previous projects, is there going to be a financial contribution that will be required from the county? And usually these programs are matching funds.
No, so forgive me, I can't off the top of my head think of what the actual program name is called right now. That is, do you know, Delaney? The Building Broadband Fund. So that does not require municipal contribution. And I think the amount assigned to Elgin County is around the $7 million mark. But as far as other funding programs that would require matched funding, to my knowledge at this time, they don't exist.
Now, is that $7 million, is that a federal and provincial contribution?
So, just provincial.
I think it is just provincial.
Just provincial. We'll provide an update on that. I apologize, I should have thought to provide one today and include that within your agenda. But the RFP process, they did put a call out for ISPs. They shortlisted them, and I haven't heard anything since, but it's worth researching and providing an update to the committee as a whole with respect to that Building Broadband Fund.
They're still sorting out after the election and getting everyone, that's gonna take a little while.
And I think a lot of it too is the availability of contractors, because I see they're working in West Ogden, I see they're working in Southwest Middlesex. There's a lot of work happening as we speak, and so when you call an RFP and somebody hasn't got the capacity to do it, they're not gonna get it, so.
I know that contracts with SWIFT, we get updates, and supply chain,
Yeah.
some of the contractors, they were all encouraged to pre-order and get bids in, and some did, some didn't. So there's been delays because their product is not coming through.
Yes, so if I may just expand on that, I think Councillor McPhail raises an interesting point, which is what happens if the Elgin lot that is part of this funding program doesn't attract an ISP to complete the work? through this program, in which case is there something that Elgin County can do to advocate for those funds to be administered through Elgin County or some other creative solution. So I think it would be prudent that I provide a follow-up report to the committee in short order. Recognizing that there are supply chain issues, there's also a limited number of ISPs that exist that could, that probably submitted through the program and are on the short list or pre-qualified list. So more information to come on that, but I suspect this could be an area where the committee supports not only advocacy, but could start thinking about some sort of action plan.
Yeah, because there's a lot of capacity issues. Like you said, there's just not the people to bid on the job, so then you're not getting the fare. Dominique, go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Just going back to the advocacy plan. It's great work. It's nice to see it sort of come into shape, come into life. So well done on that. And I realize that, certainly the role of the committee or the council is not to get to that, the action or sort of task level. And so to that end, I'm wondering if it would be useful, if it would be possible to either add or rewrite the objectives into outcomes that we could keep an eye on. And I certainly favor outcomes over sort of outputs and, doing. Mainly it's easier to track outcomes. And also I think it buys staff more flexibility in terms of tasks. So you can adjust based on capacity, based on, new information that comes along. You can add and delete some of the actions that you have planned as needed without really affecting the outcome. So in other words, you can find different ways of achieving the outcome. So I would be very interested in having a column that states what are we trying to see at the end of and trying to achieve. And I'm wondering if those answers actually don't already exist in previous documents in the strategy that staff have produced already. So I don't think it shouldn't be too much work. It would be just pulling or connecting those previous, like the strategy documents with this document. And the other question I had, because I also see our role as ensuring capacity on our staff and feasibility. So I noticed there are no timelines at this point in the plan. So it's hard to gauge, are we trying to do all this by the end of this year, for example? Is this more of a 3-year with different priorities being year 1 or year 2? So if that was added, I think that would help also assess, is this a feasible advocacy plan? And finally, on the responsibility side, I also notice it's more of a department. It's not a person assigned, and it just felt like a lot of work, and I wasn't sure if we're talking about one person in each of those areas or multiple staff, and just wanted to make sure that it was reasonable to ask of these various areas.
Go ahead.
Through you, Mr. Chairman, very good points that you raise, and I think it's easy enough to rewrite an outcomes column. I think that makes a lot of sense. So we'll endeavor to be clear about what the committee is trying to accomplish. As to address your first point, that does afford us some flexibility with the action plan itself or the actions. Timelines. So we did contemplate and discuss timelines and decided not to include them until such time as the committee provided some direction. So we wanted this to be the committee's plan and not a staff generated plan. We also wanted to relay to you as a committee that we recognize that this is an area that has been prioritized by council, so much so that it's supported by a committee. And we want the committee to know that staff recognize this as a big priority for us as well. So we carefully reviewed all of the responsibilities and feel that we can commit to them as a team. I'm hesitant to identify individuals because many of these actions do require more than one individual. And I think detailing it in that way might be more overwhelming than it seems now. So I think we, as much as it says administrative services and communications, it's safe to assume that those operational actions are going to be supported by an interdisciplinary team. So we'll pull in resources from across the county in order to address the actions and ensure the outcomes are met. So timelines we could spend some work on after we receive some committee direction. We'd be happy to revise the plan to include some outcomes. And I think that many of the actions through your comments are better suited to like a staff action plan to support a committee plan that clearly articulates outcomes. So we're happy to do some more work in terms of how this is set up and the details with respect to actual committee actions. But I appreciate that feedback very much.
Further comments? Duncan?
When you were talking, Julie, about the ISP contracts being, not so much the contracts, but the RFPs that are out there, there are a limited number of ISPs that are pre-qualified to bid on that, correct?
Correct.
Okay, so what's the situation if, as you said, there are no bids? Is that where we come together to say, okay, Elgin County will, we will manage that $7 million. We will hire our own contractors and we'll put fiber in the ground. And I'm looking at which report that said that the western end of Elgin County will be serviced more by wireless than by fiber. And can we come up with a plan that would allow us to use those dollars to connect towers to fibers through contractors that we hire to put that fiber in the ground for us?
Through you, Mr. Chairman. So I think that is an interesting option worth contemplating, though I'm hesitant to kind of put the cart before the horse, so to speak, until we find out what the province's plan was for those municipalities who didn't have ISPs submit proposals for. So I'm sure that was part of their, the structure of their program, and we should find out more information. But definitely there is no harm in thinking about how that might work for Elgin County and what that might look like. So I suggest work is better suited once we have a little bit more information on whether that's even a possibility. It would be great.
Well, I mean, the ISPs are gonna bid where there's enough market for them to get a return. So at some point in time, the province is going to have to recognize that in rural areas, that is never gonna happen. So if they're going to be good to their word and provide broadband to everyone, they're going to have to come up with another solution to that. And I think it would be great if we were able to be kind of in a position to have some forethought put into it as to what that solution is going to look like.
Continue.
Okay, thank you. So was there any feedback specific to the communications and engagement pillar before I move on to the next pillar? Great. So the next pillar is leadership and relationship building. And the objective, which again will translate into outcomes for your next meeting, is to streamline the approval process for new broadband projects. And there are many actions associated with that one that we have identified. And the second objective is to establish Elgin County as the lead for advancing rural broadband efforts. The third one is to build and enhance relationships with the public, ISPs, and other levels of government regarding broadband. And that sums up leadership and relationship building. Happy to receive any feedback.
Comments?
Great.
Mr. Chair, just a quick comment on that.
Go ahead, Mike.
I'm having a personal experience in a region outside of Elgin, which on the trying to get municipal consent, and compared to Elgin today, I just wanted the committee to know that it, quite frankly, is daunting is an understatement. And I think the county actually is doing a fairly good job on this today as far as facilitating. And I'm not suggesting that we can't do better, as we can, but we're doing fairly well compared to parts of the province. It's amazing still the mindset that is out there that seems to more be, you're making our lives difficult as opposed to you're bringing a vital critical service to our ratepayers. So I just wanted to make that point. So I think there is room for improvement, but I think this county's in pretty good shape already as far as how it deals with broadband applications and municipal consent requests.
Dominique, go ahead.
Yeah, I would echo that. And as I was reading some of those items, I'm thinking some of these things we've already acted upon, and it will be nice to track that. And perhaps going back to possible timelines, which is basically a prioritizing exercise. And I can understand it's a conversation between the committee and staff. I know for me, I would find it hard to put any kind of time, not knowing how much effort and how many resources are available. But perhaps one suggestion I would have to help staff put some timelines or priorities on all of the objectives that you have listed would be to start definitely with the sort of, the matrix of low effort, high impact. And as the one we just stated in terms of reviewing our policies, that was a fairly low effort, so to speak, for a really high impact. So perhaps going back through all of the objectives and making sure perhaps between now and the end of this year or the end of this term for this committee, that all of the low effort, high impact, like the reaching out to government, finding out and being proactive in terms of funding programs and finding out where we stand and being proactive, those could be targeted as the objectives to be accomplished for the end of this term, with others at the discretion of next council, perhaps.
Thank you for that.
Thank you, Dominique. As far as back to Mike's comments, I was just thinking, like, I do believe the county's come a long way and probably are the leaders. I would comment that maybe not all lower municipal partners are as advanced, and maybe that may be an opportunity to, because they can slow things down as well. And I think there's some of them are coming a long ways too, but maybe they're not all there. That's a personal opinion, but Duncan?
I have to agree with you, Mr. Chairman, going back to Mike's remarks. In all honesty, it's been the combined strength of this committee that has literally changed the attitude at Elgin County when it comes to broadband. And so certainly the work that's been done by this group is getting results. And so let's keep moving things forward. And as Mike says, there's room for improvement. Let's find that improvement and let's recommend to county council that this is the direction that we feel that we need to go.
Good points. Okay.
So the next pillar is advocacy, and the objective is in bold, funding for rural broadband in Elgin. Done so intentionally. And that is it for that bucket or that pillar. So any feedback on that one? Any other main advocacy efforts you'd like us to focus on?
Well, I think funding is so critical, but even if we get the funding, we want to spend it wisely. You know, I think we have that elegant solution. We've done a lot of work to get what we think will work. We do not need someone from 2 hours away telling us how it should be done. I think that's important, to me anyway. Duncan?
Just something for the committee to think about as we have just gone through a provincial election. We do have a new MPP in Elgin County. I don't know what he knows or what he doesn't know about the broadband situation in Elgin County. So I think it kind of maybe behooves us to invite him to one of our connectivity committee meetings and have a roundtable discussion with Mr. Flack as to what we're trying to achieve here as a committee and where we would like to see Elgin County future with broadband. Is that something that's worth looking into?
Is that, I put the question out there to those members of county council, is that direction that you would need from county council?
Okay, well, whoever, whatever the process, I don't know. Just asking, is that something that would be beneficial to the committee and would be beneficial to a new MPP to have that information firsthand from the county council, or whether it be this committee? There's some passionate expertise around the committee table here that
I suspect that the ward and MPP, Mr. Flack, are probably eagerly waiting to get to know each other. Certainly we could offer, I'm pretty sure that Ward French would appreciate some help. We can ask her, but you know, it is one of our top priorities. So I think we just need to convey that we would be willing if it was requested.
I don't think it's something that we need to do next week, but I think it's just something that we keep in the back of our mind. And Julie, you know the mechanics of how this is best to be done, and certainly it's discussions that we can have moving forward.
Personally. Through you, Mr. Chair, I think in terms of timing, it might be best if we finalize the advocacy plan and include that recommendation in the report that we present to Elgin County Council to be endorsed. So as part of the overall advocacy plan, it would be to extend an invitation to the MPP and just seek council's kind of nod in that direction. And then it's over to our MPP as to whether he is available and or interested in attending.
Sure, he's going to be busy.
Mr. Chair, may I ask then what timelines are we talking about? Because I agree, I'm sure council, if it's not planned already, should be recommending a meeting at least sooner rather than later between the warden and our new MPP. Just, you know, we have several files that are critical as we're preparing for AMO, but perhaps it could be a recommendation of this committee that, you know, this happen sooner rather than later, and that the topic may not be limited to connectivity, but it should be up there.
Yes, so certainly that planning is already underway to have that meeting. That's typically what we do when there is a changeover in our MPP or MP office. So that's underway. We can I can certainly connect with the warden and give her a heads up on this. And as you've mentioned, it would be part of a broader conversation about a number of Elgin County initiatives. So thank you for bringing that forward, and we'll keep moving in that direction, just waiting on some timing.
Okay. Good discussion.
All right, so the next pillar is education. And the objective is to support public awareness of available connectivity options. And this is something that we heard loud and clear through the survey that we sent out to our community. Very valuable feedback from the community that we received through that survey. So we've used that to inform the need for supporting ISPs and helping promote their services within our community, but also helping residents connect directly with those ISPs. So we've developed a number of ways that we could provide that enhanced support. So the next objective is to enhance public understanding of the broadband landscape locally and provincially. So often there's an approach where you might feel like this is only impacting you, and we want them to know that work is underway and there are some alternatives coming to our community, but also helping them recognize what's in our sphere of jurisdiction, what's been supported by county council, what's being supported by the province, et cetera. The next one is to ensure that residents are aware of Elgin's efforts to advance broadband. So we've pulled that one out specifically. And that sums up the draft advocacy plan. Happy to receive any feedback.
I liked it. It was a pretty easy read. I liked it, but further comments?
I don't know whether it's just me or what it is, but is it a situation that, we've come through COVID fatigue? I know that a number of months, even years ago, broadband was something that was talked about quite often in the media. I know that a lot of people on the street were talking about it. But I've noticed in the last little while, whether people have more or less that don't have it, have just kind of give up on it. I don't hear the province talking much about it now after the election is over. I don't hear the federal government talking much about it after the recent federal election. Is this something that we need to keep an eye on, that we don't let this become old news, because old news then seems to drop off the agenda of the government, and if that happens, we're all in trouble.
I think that's very true. I think, now the school kids did go back to school, so that took a lot of the pressure off parents. People were trying to work from home, and those horror stories, everyone trying to crowd the internet, but now that we're back out again, so who knows where we'll be this fall. And so I think there is some pressure off the government. They won the election. People go on holidays in summers, but yeah, I think we have to keep pressure on. But Dominique, comment?
Yes, I want to echo that, and I think it is very much a role of this committee to keep the pressure on and keep the urgency on, because I agree, a lot of pressure on the networks have been lifted with people going back to the office, people going back to school. However, a lot of services have now moved online during the pandemic and are going to stay online. And some services, government services, some of our own services, will go as far as not even going back to being offered face-to-face. So what I'm hearing is that at the local individual household level, there are still significant issues, even accessing a municipal council for meeting, that where perhaps a space doesn't quite allow for to be present in person. And so there are still some frustrations and some limitations that are still unacceptable, and with healthcare and other services. So let's use this advocacy plan and to remind ourselves first that the urgency is still there. It's just there are many other unfortunate issues that are top of mind, but we can contribute to that urgency.
That's absolutely right. And every time a resident out there gets internet, they become happy and it's not an issue with them anymore. So, and then we are getting more and more people with internet. So, that clamor isn't there, but there's still, like you say, many out there. And it only takes, like a year ago, Canada, we were in lockdown. And we get the further away and we forget. But when you get the school kids and mom and dad trying to work from home, and there are some horror stories. So the job's not done. We got to keep, like you say, keep the pressure on. Any other comments?
Yeah, Mr. Chair.
Go ahead, Mike.
Just want to comment about the broadband mapping, which in context of the last pillar Julia spoke about. I think that's a fantastic decision to have done that. And as much as I know it's lots of work and it's work to keep it up, but the reason that I think it's particularly good is more from the perspective of service providers. I think I've certainly seen, and I'm sure the county has seen, many of the service providers, and not necessarily all the large ones, are very reluctant to provide data on their networks and let us know, or let the public know through such a public spot as that map where services are available. And I think this will probably force some of them to maybe change that focus a little bit, because if there's areas that they in fact do have service that show as not being serviced on our mapping, it might incent them to perhaps share a little bit more information. And the flip side of that, of course, which I think is what the intent was, is so that they know where service can be deployed. It isn't available today. So I think that's a great concept. The other thing, this is sort of I guess on a high level basis. I know it's sprinkled throughout the advocacy plan, but I think one of the other challenges that we saw as a committee is getting to the right people as far as the ISPs, and that's been easier with the smaller ones, of course, because they're coming to us, which is great, but the larger ones not so much. And I don't. It may be in there. I'll admit I didn't spend as much time with the plan as I would like to before this meeting. But is there any specific focus on developing the contacts within the ISPs themselves as far as the advocacy?
No, it's something worth considering for sure, because as you've pointed out, Mike, that is a real struggle where we can pick up the phone and call our local ISPs, but sometimes we have to call and talk to 10 people before we're able to connect with the right individual at a larger ISP. So I think we'll flesh that one out a bit more for the next iteration of the connectivity advocacy plan. Thank you for bringing that forward.
Duncan?
What I found with the larger ISPs, they won't tell you if their office is on fire.
Yeah, there's that part. Julie?
Just one more comment through you, Mr. Chair, to Mike. Thank you for bringing up the map. This was, all credit goes to Brian Lima and his team for making this happen. It was a lot of work and there were a few different versions of it, and it did involve quite a bit of research and work. So I think that's worth pointing out, and we look forward to sharing that with ISPs, and glad to hear that from your perspective it will be a useful tool.
Good.
Will that mapping be easier going forward? I think you probably had to go back a lot to find a lot of information that you could find, but going forward with the agreements that we've now put in place for people who use our road allowance, it should come up fairly easy.
Yeah, so long as we're advised of the information or receive the information, absolutely, it's a lot easier to move forward.
And so this is one of those advocacy strategies where we need to work closely with our local municipal partners because we are aware of the county permits that we're issuing. But we want to work with our local municipalities in order to be advised of when projects are taking place within their municipalities as well, so that we keep this map as current as possible. And I should also give a shout out to our local municipal partners who provided us with vital information to inform this map. So everyone was quick to provide us with the information we needed to come up with a comprehensive map, and we couldn't have done that without our partners.
Good. Taking that one step farther, as Mike had mentioned about the smaller ISPs seem to be more agreeable to share their information with us. Have we gone out to the smaller ISPs that are working solely with wireless and have been able to plot their coverage area? Is that something that possibly we should be trying to see if they'd be willing to allow us to plot where their towers are and what their coverage area is out of those towers, so we know what's covered and what isn't?
We're happy to give some thought to that, how that would look, how that would work, and how much work would be involved in that. So we'll consider it as part of the follow-up work that we do with respect to the connectivity advocacy plan and see if resources permit to incorporate that, and regardless, we'll include it in the plan and then work with the connectivity committee to prioritize. So if that is a critical project and it is possible within our team, then we'll provide those recommendations and seek your direction.
Okay. Any more discussion? I believe we have a resolution if we're done discussion.
Be it resolved that the report from the Chief Administrative Officer entitled Connectivity Advocacy Plan dated June 22nd, 2022 be received and filed, and that feedback from the committee be incorporated into the Connectivity Advocacy Plan, and further that a revised Connectivity Advocacy Plan be presented to the committee for review at a future meeting.
All right, do we have a mover and seconder, please? Mike and Justin, we ready for the vote?
Councillor Jiguer,
Yes.
Councillor McPhail,
Yes.
Councillor Pennings, or Justin Pennings in this case, Mike Andrews, Deputy Warden Marks.
Yes,
5-0, the motion is carried.
very good, thank you. On to other business, and I see it says none. Correspondence, it says none. And
You could put a call out for other business.
yes, I need new business, other business. Okay, date of next meeting. Call of the chair work, or do you want to try and pick a date?
I think it would be, we can work toward a timeline set by the committee. So I'm quite confident that we can provide some information. It's really, we're getting into summer holiday season for committee members, and so
And when would you guess or suggest?
it's really up to the committee.
Thoughts?
Is 1 month feasible or reasonable to have an update on the funding program as well as a revised advocacy plan?
Definitely.
So that would be early August, because we're on doorstep of July.
So for example, I think we have county council on July 26th. Could it be an afternoon meeting after that?
It may be aggressive, but I might suggest the week before, July 26th, and we can work towards that timeline, only because we're unsure of the status of county council and whether we'll be lame duck. And so it would be great to finalize the connectivity advocacy plan for presentation to council on July 26th. So if we could work backwards from that date.
What about the 20th? That's a Wednesday.
Yep, that works for me.
Great.
1 o'clock, 2 o'clock?
We generally hold them at 2 o'clock.
Yeah, that would work for me.
Great.
All right. If there's nothing else, I'd entertain a motion for adjournment. Please. Moved by Jager and second by Justin Pennings. Please call the vote.
Counselor Jiguer,
Yes.
Counselor McPhail,
Yes.
Justin Pennings,
Yes.
Mike Andrews, Deputy Warden Marks.
Yes,
5-0, the motion is carried.
very good. As always, thank you everyone for your attention. Enjoy the good weather out there.
Thank you.